Ben and Toby, thank you for taking time out of your week. We're obviously here to talk about Year 10, which had its world premiere at FrightFest as part of the First Blood Strand. It was the big 25th anniversary of the festival. What was the experience like of, not only being at the festival, but then, having a film and being part of that sort of, prestigious lineup?
Well, for me, it was quite a busy weekend. I actually went there a day early. I went there on the Friday, and I spent all of Friday giving out flyers, trying to promote the film. And I met a lot of people, a lot of the attendees, who were really, really nice. And that was just a really nice intro to the festival, really, just getting to meet them. And they're all super genre and horror film enthusiasts. And then the festival, the screening that was on the Saturday. I thought it went really well. I was a bit nervous about in the run up to it, especially the interviews. But we ended up with a pretty full cinema, and I think we got a really good audience response. So
Yeah.
yeah, it went well, I think. How about you, Toby?
Yeah, it was, I mean, I don't know if you know, but I hadn't acted before, so it was very much a new experience for me. And wasn't aware we were going to be doing interviews, but got drawn into those. So yeah, it was quite overwhelming in a way, but the screening was great and nice to do the questions and answers before and after for that. And yeah, just nice to see it on a proper big screen because we'd had one cast and crew screening before, but it was on a sort of half size cinema screen. So yeah, it's nice to see it on the big thing.
Right, so Toby, this is it's your first time acting. You come from a background of working as a cinematographer. How was it, stepping in front of the camera?
Yeah, it was scary, to be honest. There was definitely days before we started shooting where I was going to Ben, are you sure you want me to do this? Don't you think it's a good idea?
Yeah,
But Ben was quite sure that it was the right thing to do.
insistent.
Yeah, insistent. And then it took me, yeah, it's just very nerve-wracking because the other cast were, proper actors, and I felt a bit out of my depth, I suppose. Hannah, the girl that played my girlfriend, was quite helpful and supportive. So after a few days, kind of settled into it and then actually quite enjoyed it. And yeah, it was fun, very different, but it's nice to be on the other side of the camera and kind of feel what that's like.
Mm.
Yeah.
We should add though that you've got a lot of survival experience of survival situations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
probably
Real
the
life experience.
real life experience. So probably the kind of the physicality of the role you
Yeah.
felt more relaxed about, would
Yeah.
you say?
Yeah. I had real life things to kind of think about and draw on, I suppose. Yeah, which was helpful.
And I guess, the fact that this film, is relatively dialogue free, that must help with that first, steps into acting. You don't have to worry about remembering
Yeah.
your lines. But then on the other hand, you have got to remember that, you've got to run from this spot to this spot, and then you've got to do this because, like you say, it is a very action-based role.
Yeah. Yeah. It did. Yeah. Have even more respect for actors now, having done the role because there's so much to think about, and I didn't, as you said, didn't have to think about remembering the lines. But yeah, put your hand here, stand there, move a little bit further to right, and then yeah, trying to tell everything through your facial expressions as well. It's definitely tricky.
Toby, you do have quite a lot of experience behind the camera, though. So I guess that
Yeah,
gave
that
you
definitely
that gave
helps.
you a
Yeah.
grounding just in terms of the blocking and stuff like that, and the process, what to expect.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the emotional scenes you were most nervous about. There's some
Yeah.
quite intense emotional scenes there.
Yeah. They ended up being, well, yeah, hopefully you thought they were right, but I think they ended up being easier because you have something to really focus on and get your sort of your mind into. Whereas the scenes that there wasn't so much going on, I was like, what do I do here? How do I just move from, yeah, walk in a straight line without it looking strange?
Yeah. And then, for you, Ben, what is it like, then having, somebody that knows exactly how a camera works and, how a shot should look? Was there any nerves about, is he going to come over and be like, no, 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 that's not how you frame this shot?
Um, No, there was none of that actually. No, there was no misbehaving at all. Um, it was very Toby was actually great, to be honest. I think as we said, just his experience with the outdoors and kind of survival scenarios really helped. So I think all of the physicality of the acting was pretty second nature actually. Um, which was one of the main reasons why I cast Toby in the first place. So that was really helpful. And then I also think your experience behind the camera meant that we just kind of, um, Toby knew what to expect in terms of the sort of the order of shots and setups and stuff like that. So that just made the whole process a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Um,
And our brother Charlie shot it, so that was kind of,
yeah,
we trusted him to yeah, handle the cinematography with efficiency and style.
yeah. So no, I actually, I found Toby very easy to work with, and we just kind of rattled through it generally, didn't we? We just
Yeah.
ended it mostly one take wonders, sometimes, two or three takes, but I don't remember anything that we got stuck on, or where we had to do lots and lots of takes to get it right.
Mm.
It was more, yeah, a lot of the acting was quite technical because there's so much physicality in it. It was really about framing and blocking and movements, quite technical, a lot of the notes. And we did have some time to talk through the role, just kind of broad notes on the role before we started filming, um, which I think was probably quite helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it went fairly seamlessly, I think.
That's that's the thing about this character. The story is very much kind of a snapshot in the life of there's been all of this story before. There's going to be all this story after for these people. How much did you sort of work on figuring out the backstory? Although we don't necessarily see it as an audience, how much work went into that for yourselves to sort of prepare, knowing who your character was and where they were going.
Well, yeah, in terms of the backstory, what has happened the 10 years prior to year 10, there's been some kind of cataclysmic event, and in the end, I did have some ideas of what that could be specifically, but in the end, we decided in tandem with the production company that we'd just leave it open. We thought maybe that's a bit more interesting. But it's certainly the case that civilization has collapsed, and um, agriculture agriculture is no longer viable. So therefore civilization collapses, and you're basically you end up with a world where there's effectively no food. Um, and that then is the context for the cannibalism that follows. So I guess in terms of talking through where the characters had come from, it is really just broad stroke notes about that kind of world,
Mm.
and it's very much a kind of brutal survival film. So it's just talking about how you adapt as a human to living in a world that is more animalistic
Yeah,
in
quite a
its
simple world
essence.
it's
Yeah.
become. So yeah, quite simple, broad stroke notes were enough, I think, for that kind of
Yeah.
role.
Yeah, I think there's not too much complexity in terms of in terms of sort of where the characters have come from, and there were a few details we discussed, such as there having been more family members. I think it's alluded to at one point. We see a photo with some family members in the shelter. Um, so that then sets up some of
Mm.
the emotional reaction with girl and the context for those scenes. Um, this idea that humans are dying out, and there's fewer year by year there are fewer and fewer humans, and Toby's character, with his small family unit, they're becoming increasingly isolated, and and it looks like he's the story is moving towards him ending up entirely on his own. Um, so that was something we discussed. But no, in terms of just the kind of the world and the characters, I mean, I think to an extent it is quite instinctive in many ways. And
Mm.
I think as humans, we have a kind of a sort of intuitive understanding of that world. And you know, we actually have, even in modern society, we actually have very strong survival instincts that are kind of running underneath beneath all that. So it's really just talking through
Mm.
that world and how to kind of access those survival instincts.
In the film, obviously, it's set kind of almost like a post-apocalyptic sort of society in a way, and then there is this cannibalism aspect to the film. And both of these are sort of tried and tested things that audiences, particularly in the horror genre, are really fascinated with. What do you think it is about the end of the world and eating other people that audiences find so interesting?
I think what's interesting about post-apocalyptic scenarios is that you're transporting the audience to a lawless world where you're really putting morality to the test. So I think in modern society, I think humans behave decently largely as a consequence of social norms, and when you strip those away, um, or if you put characters in a really desperate scenario, it becomes more costly. So things like so generosity becomes increasingly costly the more desperate the scenario. Um, whereas selfishness becomes um, uh, more advantageous and more acceptable in that world. So the extremes of good and evil are exaggerated, and you really reveal human nature. So I think it has something to do with that. And yeah, I think it sort of taps into our primal drives and our kind of
Mm.
our instincts. So it has a very visceral impact on the audience.
Cannibalism?
Cannibalism.
I think it's such a shocking, it's kind of one of the most extreme, shocking examples of human behavior, isn't it? So it's such a shock factor for the audience and unimaginable in normal life. So
Yeah.
it's a real contrast for people to kind of imagine a world where that's happening, where that's possible.
Yeah. I think on the spectrum of good and evil, it's right down the extreme far end of evil in terms of um yes, selfishness, in terms of selflessness versus selfishness, eating other people to survive is really right. It really marks the extreme of that spectrum. Um, on the other hand, it's again, the more desperate the scenario, the more tempting that is, and in a way, the more understandable it is. So I suppose maybe what an audience finds interesting about that is that it kind of places them in that
Mm.
situation and asks questions and says, would you resort to cannibalism if you had to, or would you, would you cling on to for how long would you be able to hold on to your moral compass before giving in to the sort of the ruthless the demands of a ruthless animalistic world?
And the film is predominantly outside. This is an independent feature, and therefore, obviously, a low modest budget. Um, how challenging was the shoot? It being outside.
Well, in one way, it wasn't. It was actually quite easy because we were very fortunate. We found this amazing location called Folly Farm, which is a converted farmhouse, which had happened to have 200 acres of forest on their land. So we were shooting most of our locations we found within a 5 or 10 minute walk of our unit base. So that actually made things much easier. By and large, we were just using available lighting. I think we had some portable LEDs, didn't
Yeah,
we?
we had some
So
LEDs.
we
Yeah.
weren't having to do complicated lighting setups. Um, so in terms of the accessibility of just getting to location, that was actually really straightforward. The main challenges were it rained a lot. We didn't get any snow. It did rain a lot, and it was very, very muddy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So,
I'm just very cold.
yeah, it was pretty cold as well.
Yeah.
Um, the mud just slowed everything down a bit,
Yeah. I think,
and
yeah, for the crew, it was quite tough. I
yeah,
think, just lugging kit, just literally the practicalities of shooting outside when you're trying to keep everything clean and tidy and moving kit around, is not easy.
yeah.
But
We
yeah.
had a few wipeouts.
Yeah.
We had quite a few
Yeah.
wipeouts, especially in the during the chase sequences. Um, and what else?
I think people quite enjoyed it in a way because people had
Yeah,
been stuck inside over COVID, and it was nice to just be out and together and active. And yeah, it was quite fun for the cast, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it was a beautiful landscape and environment, and
Mm.
we had really nice, really decent facilities, and yeah, there was just a quite a strong communal spirit through the whole filmmaking process. So, um, yeah, it wasn't too difficult actually in the end.
And am I right in thinking that, Toby got to show off some of his survival skills during the shoot?
Yeah, we one scene that was I was trying to start a fire with
Yeah.
what was it? With sparks. Was it? Can't remember. That got cut.
No,
But yeah,
yeah,
there's
we
a
cut. There
few.
was a scene that was cut where Toby starts a fire with, I just think a couple of bits of wood,
Yeah,
but we
maybe.
cheated it, so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
made it look like you were
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah, there are a few little nuggets of survival knowledge, I guess, in there. The starting the fire to ward off the dogs.
Yeah,
Well, reviving the fire. Um, yeah, kind of low grade survival instincts throughout the whole film, I suppose.
yeah. The building the shelter. Toby actually did quite a lot of that yourself, didn't you?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
we were in pre-production. We were all kind of mucking in, with the production designer, and I think Toby's expertise probably came in handy.
Hopefully, yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and obviously the fight scenes.
Fight scenes,
Yeah.
good. Yeah. Yeah, enjoyed those.
Uh,
Um, yeah, we had one of our actors was a martial artist, so he was also helping with that, which was good. Yeah.
And with the film, like as we discussed earlier, having, little dialogue, I guess you then have to focus more on your sound design and on the score. How much work went into that? Because, in the lack, with the lack of dialogue, it's kind of that's doing the heavy lifting with, helping set that mood and atmosphere.
Mm.
yeah, that was a huge part of the film, and it took a long time. Um, we sort of did music first, or at least got a good way along the process of putting the score together before we got sound design involved, really. And yeah, it was just a huge amount of work, and it took a long time. We had really experienced people, really experienced composer and experienced sound designers. But this whole film was made on really a fraction of what you'd want to have for this kind of film. So we had to wait for their availability. Um, and so yeah, it took a long time. It was a lot of work, and yeah, I mean, I'm really, really happy with both the music and the sound design. I think they're a really important part of the film. And I knew it was always going to be, especially, I mean, with genre films in general, I think sound design, especially sound design, is more a more prominent aspect than it maybe is with a drama film. But especially in this film, I knew that, these elements were really going to be front of the stage, and um, we had to get it right. So yeah, it was quite an undertaking, and a lot of work, and Everybody worked very hard. The composer worked very hard, and the sound designers did, and yeah, it all came together, I think.
I think that's one of the great things about independent film. It is, everybody does, muck in and, they really, really care. Not to say that, big studio project, people working on big studio projects don't, but I think there is always something, quite magic about seeing, a film such as this where, everybody has put, literal like blood, sweat and tears, into making it.
Yeah, it was a big family affair. Um, we had our mum doing the food. I think she cooked about 2,000 meals.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, all four brothers, and a crew of what was the total number of
It
crew?
was small. I think we only had 12 people on set. Yeah, so it was a very, very small crew. And but in a way that was quite handy because it meant that we were very fleet-footed and we could move around quite quickly. So we weren't actually bogged down by the baggage of a bigger set. So it was quite appropriate for this film. Um, yeah, it was. No, it's very much a team effort. Everybody putting on different hats. And yeah, in a way, I think that also made it more of a fun experience, and it glued the team together quite quickly.
Yeah, it did. Jack, the first AD, was great as well.
Yeah,
I think he carried a lot of energy for everyone, which was good, which was helpful.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what are the plans for year 10 now? It's obviously had its screening at Fright Fest. Where can people who didn't see it at Fright Fest, is there any news of when and where they might be able to see it?
Release it. Oops,
Sorry.
got a phone going off. Hang on. Release is planned for December, I think. So it's a bit of a TBC situation at this stage in terms of exactly where it's going to be. Um, Prior to that, we've got it. It's going to be screening at Sitges in October, and it's also just been accepted at Trieste Science
Right.
Fiction Festival in Italy. So we've got two more big festival screenings. And yeah, then it's going to be released from December. And at this stage, I'm not sure exactly where it's going to be, so I'll have to keep you posted.
That's nice, after, freezing in shooting conditions to, getting to pop over to, to Spain and Italy. That's gonna be quite nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, a bit of a contrast, and yeah, extend the English summer a little bit. Um, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Sitges, I think, is next to Barcelona. Is that right? I think it is. Yeah. So I've been to Barcelona before. I really liked it. So it'd be nice to be back in that neck of the woods. Trieste. No, I haven't been to Trieste. I'm not even sure I've been to Italy. I've been to Sardinia.
Right.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
been to Sardinia, but I haven't been to mainland Italy. So yeah, that'll be nice. They're gonna fly me out there for Trieste. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
And have either of you got any new projects on the horizon? Anything that you're able to talk about?
Well, I've got my next what will hopefully be my next film. I've got the script written already. But it's a case of, as always, getting the money. But that is my sort of immediate next plan, and then I'm developing other scripts as well. Um, but yeah, next step for me is another film.
Yeah. For me, I'm just back to DP life. Mostly commercial stuff, so just short jobs. And then yeah, we'll see what happens with year 10 and acting. I'm not sure. We're gonna yeah, take it as it comes. Maybe try and get an agent. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the
So thank
plan.
you guys both so much for your time, and best of luck with the next festivals and with your release.
Nice one.
Lovely. Thanks a
Thank you
lot,
so
Kat.
much.